And joining us now with more on the latest developments on the multi-front war is Dan Feferman, Middle East affairs expert and chairman of Sharaka. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So this was a very difficult weekend for Israelis, with scenes reminiscent of the early days after October 7th, Israel under attack from the south, from the north, from Yemen, perhaps not with the same intensity, but are we back to a multi-front war?
I don't know if we're back to a multi-front war, but I think we never quite left it. The various terrorist groups have been severely weakened, some more than others. But of course, it was a jarring weekend for everyone in Israel. And I think, to be honest, we're all still quite traumatized. We're all still living in a state of PTSD that hasn't really transpired since October 7th. Maybe we had a few months of quiet, respite, but we're still there. And, I don't think we're going to go back to the days of intense rocket fire. Hamas is clearly on its last legs. I'm not sure at all. I haven't seen any indications that the rocket fire from Lebanon was Hezbollah. And the Houthis are, of course, a different story. But it's jarring. We're still in it. We're not out of the thick of this 500-plus day war. But I think we are on the second half of it, as opposed to still in the midst of it.
Mm-hmm. And, let's start with the Houthis. At first, they were seen as nothing more than a nuisance, but just today, they forced millions into bomb shelters. And despite the U.S. attacks, they are still standing their ground. I mean, what more needs to be done to eliminate this threat?
Yeah, first of all, I think they're still a nuisance. And that's really what they are. They are a radical, absolutely radical, fanatical terrorist pirate militia group based in Yemen, who is trying to force themselves into relevancy, into the conversation of the Middle East. And what is required, I'm not sure anyone has really thought about them seriously. The Saudis and the UAE did try to wage a contracted war against them that also failed to take them out. I think we're going to need to see ongoing strikes by the United States, by the international community. And of course, Israel may or may not need to be involved in this to take out as much of their capabilities as possible. But that doesn't mean they're not going to try to insert themselves violently into the conversation as much as possible. And really, that's what they're trying to do, is trying to just achieve some kind of relevance in the greater battles taking place across the Middle East.
And, moving now to Israel's northern front with Lebanon, the missile attacks, clearly a violation of the ceasefire agreement. What's going on with the ceasefire agreement? Is it going to hold? I know that in Lebanon, they're trying to distance themselves from this missile attack. But, what can you tell us on this front?
Yeah, again, the indications I've seen from press reports and on open source reports is that it's not Hezbollah. There are a number of different kinds of armed groups, terrorist groups, militia groups, including Palestinian groups in southern Lebanon. We're at a very critical juncture in which the IDF operations, following, of course, the famous pager attack, weakened Hezbollah. It took out its top leadership, of course, took out the vast majority of its terror and military infrastructure, to the point where the Lebanese state and the Lebanese army, generally considered weak, could reassert itself for the first time in decades. We need to play a careful game here. I think we do need to show certainly Hezbollah, but also the Lebanese, that we are serious, that we will not let fire go unanswered, rocket fire go unanswered. At the same time, we need to encourage and work with maybe other regional actors to allow and ensure the Lebanese state to reclaim sovereignty over all of Lebanon. So our counter strikes, as justified as they are, need to be very careful, making sure, as they seem to have been this past weekend, taking out military infrastructure, terrorist infrastructure, and utilizing all forms of pressure, military and diplomatic, to make sure that the Lebanese government is reasserting its sovereignty over southern Lebanon. I think we all have an interest. I think a lot of the Lebanese have an interest, and there's increasing talk in Lebanese society about sidelining Hezbollah and reaching some kind of potential diplomatic agreement with Israel, maybe so far, and I hear the rumors of Lebanon joining the Abraham Accords in some capacity.
And, at the end of the day, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and even Hamas are all backed by the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's something that's known to everyone. And yet Iran has suffered very little consequences for its terrorist actions. The threat against Israel and the West will continue so long as the Ayatollahs remain in power. So isn't it high time to act against the Islamic Republic of Iran once and for all, sort of cut off the head of the snake?
Iran was severely weakened this last year. It was seen as a menace. It was seen as a serious foe to Israel, to the moderates, and it was exposed as a paper tiger. After its last round of missile attacks against Israel, the Israeli counterstrike took out much of its air defenses, its missile program, even reportedly some of its nuclear infrastructure, and Iran was exposed as the paper tiger it was. Of course, Syria fell, its main ally in the region, Hezbollah, its crown jewel, weakened. This is the time to put increased pressure on Iran, and this has to be led by the U.S. administration. We see an administration that understands this, that is focused on this, and I'm not going to say what the outcome should be. Of course, we would all love to see a free Iran, and Iran free from its dictators that have been dominating the country, oppressing the people, and oppressing many people around the entire Middle East. But first and foremost, you need a maximum pressure campaign, and that's a return of sanctions, which have severely weakened Iran over the last decade plus, diplomatic pressure, and the threat of military pressure, which is ultimately what gets Iran to force concessions. And maybe we'll see another kind of improved JCPOA deal. The last one was quite weakened. Maybe we'll see an improved one. I think you do need to offer Iran a way out. They are radical, but they are pragmatic at the end of the day. And this is the time for the United States to lead such an effort.
And meanwhile, the fighting in Gaza is continuing. Is there an end in sight to this? What will it take now from Israel in order to be able to declare victory, to achieve victory?
What we've learned from the last 530 plus days of fighting against this absolutely fanatical enemy in Gaza, you have to figure out what hurts them. Clearly, the destruction of property in Gaza, it doesn't hurt them. Clearly, the loss of lives, both of their own terrorists and of civilians in Gaza, does not faze them. So now the Israeli leadership, we saw Defense Minister Katz threatening to conquer and hold territory in Gaza. Maybe that will work. What seems to be the case, though, is you need to bring back a lot of pressure on Hamas in order to force them to come back to the table. You need to, first of all, release the hostages. That's the last real weak point that we have. And part of what we're doing now is trying to up the pressure. They've used the last few months of the ceasefire to regroup, to rearm, to recruit new fighters. And part of what we saw, the renewed rocket fire, is a result of them having this breathing space. So this is taking out now the breathing space, reconquering areas that we had left, taking out terrorist infrastructure, which is important, upping the pressure on them. We need to get back our hostages and then pressure Hamas in every imaginable way possible and get them to accept a disarmament deal. That's really the only way out of this. As long as they're in power, we're going to have continued fighting over and over, whether it's every month or every year. But they need to be taken out of power. They need to be dismantled, demilitarized, and the entire region needs to be part of this effort.
Absolutely. Dan Feferman, thank you so much for your analysis today. Certainly never a dull moment here in Israel.